Raghnall, the four sites of the National Museum are a key part of Ireland's cultural tourism offering. How have they been performing so far this year?
Very well actually this year. Across our four sites, we have three sites in Dublin: the Museum of Archaeology in Kildare Street, Decorative Arts and History in Collins Barracks, and the Natural History Museum on Merrion Street. And then we have our fourth site, the Museum of Country Life in Thurrock Park, outside Castlebar in County Mayo. And so far this year we've had over 1 million visitors.
Excellent.
Which is 16% up on last year, but also we've achieved our millionth visitor in early September, which we've never done before, and we're heading towards something in the region of 1.3, 1.4 million visitors we would hope this year. We've had 1 million visitors every year for the last 5 years, and we've in fact doubled our total numbers in the last 10 years, and there doesn't seem to be any limit to the curiosity and interest amongst the public.
Excellent. And the National Museum, of course, has a very important role to play in commemorating 1916. Tell us about the success of the Proclaiming a Republic exhibition.
Well, the exhibition that we have for 1916 is the story that we've told a number of times before, but this year we've approached it in a very different way, telling stories about individuals, whether they be the combatants themselves, the British Army, the Dublin Military Police, the volunteers and the rebels, but also the civilians who were involved, and very personal stories such as Charles Darcy, who was killed by a sniper bullet in City Hall, and he was only 15 years of age. And it's to get this idea across to people: what would you do, or how would you feel if your 15-year-old boy was involved, took up arms in modern day?
Absolutely, very much the human story.
It is, and I think there's been a huge interest in terms of people who've come out of that exhibition very moved because they're those individual stories. We also have the accounts of the executed leaders, their last letters to their families, and it has had a huge impact. And I think this is what about the impact that an exhibition like that has on visitors, and everybody of course has their own individual experience and takes something different away from it.
Very good. And free admission, of course, to the National Museum is an important aspect, and it makes culture accessible to all. Tell us a bit about how important that is within your sort of approach to making culture accessible.
Well, free admission is the cornerstone of what we do in the museum, and it has always been for the museum free admission. It is important that everyone, whether they be tourists or whether they be members of the local community, school groups or whatever, that access is free. And of course that encourages then people to come back, repeat visitors. In our exhibitions we have visitors who come back again and again to maybe look at a single object or look at part of a gallery, or in the case of something like the Proclaiming a Republic exhibition, which is quite a large exhibition, they will come back and experience the exhibition in section by section, as it were.
Yeah. And it gives Ireland, I suppose, an advantage over some of our competitor destinations across Europe, where you pay quite a significant amount to get into some of their cultural experiences.
Yes, indeed. We have the free admission that we have contrasts very much with the experience of visitors, particularly in continental Europe and the United States, where in fact an outing to the museum can be quite an expensive business. I mean, we have the latest Vault Ireland statistics show that we are our Dublin sites are in the top 10 or 11, and we would hope that we would actually have 3 in the top 10 free attractions at the end of this year. The figures for Collins Barracks may very well exceed those of Kildare Street for the first time ever, and it's largely due to the success of the 1916 exhibition here.
Excellent. Of course, free admission means that you require funding from the state in terms of operations and marketing and putting on exhibitions and so on. Could the state be doing more in terms of supporting financially the national cultural institutions?
Yes, I think investment in culture and heritage is as important an infrastructural investment as that of road building or new airports or whatever important as all as they are. And I think the statistics show that a huge proportion of visitors that come to Ireland because of the cultural attractions that we have on offer.
Absolutely.
And I think historically cultural institutions and the museum have been underfunded by comparison with any yardstick you would compare with other similar institutions in Britain around the continent. And one would hope now, with the upturn in the economy, that the investment, that will be serious investment into our national cultural institutions.
Yes, because it's investment for the future. The Museum of Country Life, you mentioned that you have the national footprint, you have the National Museum site just outside Castlebar. It's one of my favourite attractions. How is it performing?
It's performing quite well. I mean, it typically gets over around about 100,000 visitors every year. It is a huge attraction for not only for the Castlebar area but for the whole region. It's particularly popular amongst groups, tourist groups and returned immigrants, families who come to visit their relatives in the west of Ireland. And it has a huge reach in terms of outreach, in terms of the hinterland, the communities around there, whether they be the local school groups, the men's sheds, and the immigrant groups. We had an exhibition there last year on migrant women, comparing the experiences of Irish women who went to the United States at the end of the 19th, early 20th century, and compared their experience with those of female migrants who have actually settled in and around the Castlebar area in the last decade or so. And that has had a huge impact, and it also means that we can actually have these debates around migrant issues, around direct provision centres, that sort of thing, and museums are perfectly placed to have those kind of discussions mediated through exhibitions which raise these important social issues. We have an exhibition at the moment on Roger Casement and his humanitarian work in the Museum of Archaeology in Kildare Street, for example, and that highlights again issues of slavery, of exploitation, and notwithstanding the fact that slavery may have been abolished in certain areas, these issues are still important to be discussed, and we would hold lectures, seminars around these kind of topics, and I think this is one of the important areas of museums as sort of mediators in those kind of discussions.
Absolutely. So sort of historical subjects are interpreted in quite a topical way for a topical audience.
Yes, and it's not just, these are not just ancient objects in cases for people to look at because they're pretty objects to look at in cases. I mean, they do actually act as triggers. I mean, objects are very powerful triggers of memory and of discussion, and all the latest work on education shows that, certainly particularly in terms of schools, that actually mediating subjects such as history and that through the use of objects is a very powerful tool to actually engage people.
Super. Raghnall, thank you so much. Congratulations on the performance year to date, and we wish you very best of luck going forward.
Okay, thank you all.